Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Rework It here at Adobe Live. Hi, Jesús. How's it going?
Hey, Kladi, I'm doing well. How are you?
Very good, thank you. And welcome to everybody that is joining us here on Adobe Live. I can see, Jesús, are you in the chat already?
Yeah, I'm in the chat.
I can see so many lovely familiar faces. I can see Sean, Valdo here, Ciao Bambino, General Kenobi, Michelle, Umacron. Thank you so much for joining us here. Noor, I'm always so excited to see familiar faces, but also new faces joining us at Rework It. And if you're watching from YouTube, make sure to head on behance.net/live. So I will be able to say hi to you, and Jesus also will be able to see your comments, and we'll be able to also reply to your questions while we rework the file that you've submitted. And talking about that, let me just tell you real quick what our Rework It is all about. And I'm just going to jump into my screen. As you can see here, I have the landing page of Rework It, which you can find on iamkladi.com/reworkit. From here, you're going to be able to read a little bit more about the show. And as you can see, it's the show with Jesús Ramirez and I. We're here to rework your work. So we're always looking forward to your submissions. Make sure to click on the button where it says submit your design in order to open up the form. And from here, all we need is your email and your artwork. And we're going to get back to you and with more details about the show and when you're going to be featured. So make sure to submit. We're looking forward to the next projects for our next Adobe Live shows. So make sure to submit your work because we're excited to get your Photoshop, InDesign, and Illustrator files. But I think that's enough for an intro. I know, Jesús, you're ready to jump into Illustrator, so I will be
Photoshop.
sorry, in Photoshop. I do Illustrator all the time. Sorry, I only talk about Illustrator. But yes, I'm gonna jump into your screen right now so we can have a look at the first submission for today.
Yeah, thank you for that introduction, Claudia. And I just want to encourage everyone to submit now. Like right before we get started, feel free to submit your files. Remember, Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign files. So make sure you submit now. Very, very important because we do want to feature you, of course. And yeah, today we're going to work with this file. And unfortunately, Nick, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, Nick Nisita, he did not submit his Behance profile. So make sure that you submit your Behance profile when you submit your work. We want to feature your work. So, and I'm sorry, I was looking at the wrong name for the for the artist. The artist is actually Alex Cito. Sorry, Alex. Sorry about that. But Alex did not submit his files,
Jesus, I
his
think
Behance
you
profile.
were correct. I think Alicito
Oh,
is the other composite.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm sorry. I must have had my files here confused. Sorry about that. Okay, so Nick, in either case, Nick and Alex both did not submit their Behance profiles. So make sure that you do that. And really quickly, let me bring up just Behance. I mean, I'm sure that if you're watching this, and you probably know what Behance is, but just in case you're watching this on YouTube or you found this somewhere on the internet, make sure that you go into behance.net and log in with your Adobe ID. You can create an Adobe ID for free and create a Behance profile so that you can feature your work. And this is just a great way of creating an online portfolio and then having people see your work, comment, and it's a great opportunity to get noticed and be seen. And obviously, if you submit your work onto us, we feature your Behance profile. So make sure that you create a Behance profile if you don't have one. So if you're watching this now and you don't have a Behance profile, then create one. And the file that you use to create your first project, make sure that you submit it to Rework It so that we can work on it here live on the show. So again, behance.net is the place where you want to be and the place where you want to create your profiles. Also, if you're watching from YouTube, make sure you head over into behance.net/live because we cannot see the YouTube comments. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone is on Behance. Awesome. So this is the file that I'm going to work with today. And this file was a submission. It's basically just a template and a template that displays these three posters, as you can see here. And the posters are just very small composites, and they're fine. There's nothing wrong with them per se, but there's a couple of things that I would do differently here. For example, I wouldn't necessarily do the composites in the actual working template. just because I think it overcomplicates things. So what I would do instead is, um, work on a separate file and then either do a place link or place embedded or a smart object. Since I already have all the files here in this document, then all I would need to do is click on convert to smart object, and there's my smart object. The reason that I want to do that is so that when I open up my smart object, I can have access to all my files independently from the rest of the composite. So then I can make my adjustments um, to my composite if I need to adjust it. See how these posters were created by using all these different layers. And unfortunately, because of the way they were created, it makes it a little bit harder to work, having everything in one giant document. And in this case, since I created a smart object from, the contents of this document, I have all this extra space. In reality, if I would have done this, the appropriate way, I would have just had this as my smart object, and I can come in here and make all the adjustments that I want. Also, this is really, really small, as you can see. So if you want to then make a change to your composite or maybe add something to it, it's going to be really difficult to do because you're working only with 300 and, less than 400 pixels wide. And what is the height on this? Less than 600. So you're basically working on a 600 by 400 pixel image, which is really, really tiny. So instead, I would work with something much larger. So, obviously this is not going to look good, but I think it'll help illustrate the point. If I go into image, image size, and, just make this, we'll say, I don't know, 1600 or something, still not super huge, but much bigger. When you close it and save it, it's still small on, well, actually it's not small just because I was adjusting it, but when I transform it and, make it fit on the poster frame again, then, it'll be the size that you want. But the point is now that you can use that composite for other things and not necessarily keep it all tiny and small just for this specific project. Now, I don't know your workflow, so if you're watching this, you might be thinking, well, I have a separate file. All I did is I drag the images onto here and, I have my real composite somewhere else. And if that's the case, I still would make the argument that you don't need to do that, because if you open this up and this is your composite, and I'm going to save this somewhere, we'll see where it goes. Let me see. I guess I can go in my desktop and I have a whole bunch of stuff here. So I'm just going to put it in this folder, Stocks for Jesus. And I'll just call it third poster. So this is my document, right? So if the workflow is I have my document as a separate file, and all I'm doing is opening up the file and dragging the layers onto my working document, that's still a workflow that I don't think is very efficient. The more efficient thing to do is to place it as a linked smart object. And the way that works is you would go into File, select Place Linked, and let me find that folder again. And it's right here. There it is.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but I need to say hi to the chat real quick. We have some very special guests. So I want to say hi to Sean, Megan, Christine, Nor, and a special hello to Dorina and to Bill Hughes. So Bill used to be my neighbor before he moved to Spain, and he's a wonderful Google photographer. So go and check Bill portfolio on Behance. And I just wanted to say hi. I've not seen him in many years since he moved away to Spain. But Bill, I hope you're having a great time, and thank you so much for joining us alongside everyone else here. And Tom says hi, long time to see you, Jesús, as well.
Awesome. Good to see everybody in the chat. And talking about the chat, I do see a question from Sean. Sean said, PSB, do you save all your PSDs as a PSB? For those of you that don't know, a PSB is a Photoshop big file. There's a file size limit to PSDs. Oh my God, I should know this. Is it 4 gigabytes or 2 gigabytes? I think it's, somebody in the chat's going to correct me. I'm sure Sam probably knows. I think the limit is 2 gigabytes. It's either 2 or 4 gigabytes. And I'm sorry for not remembering, but the point is that Photoshop files have a file size limit. So then at some point, Adobe introduced the PSB file, basically a Photoshop document that doesn't have a file size limit. And that is the default for smart objects. So when I double click on a smart object, then it opens up in a new tab, you'll notice that the default is PSB, Photoshop big. That way there's no file size limit and your smart objects can theoretically be as big as you want. Well, actually there's a limit for that as well, but we're not going to worry about that. The point is that there Photoshop documents that could be much larger than regular Photoshop documents, and that's the default for smart objects. When I save my file, I saved it at the default PSB. So I don't necessarily save all my PSDs as PSBs, but in this case, since that was default, then yeah, that's what I left it, and I wasn't going to change it just in case. I mean, I knew that this wasn't going to be 2 gigabytes, which is the limit. And thanks, Sam, for confirming that in the chat.
There is also another question.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know if you were giving more details regarding the PSBs.
No worries. Basically the whole point is that I don't always save my documents as a PSB. In this case, I saved it because that was the default from the smart object that we were working with, and there's no downside to saving it as a PSB. But it's really not necessary if your document's going to be less than 2 gigabytes.
And we have another question from Nora saying, is it possible to have a nested smart objects?
Yeah, so you can have a smart object within a smart object within a smart object here. I mean, I'll show you. So let me just try it with one of these, with this one called second poster, which is hidden here. So this one, second poster. So I can convert that to a smart object, right? And then I could, theoretically add a levels adjustment layer, clip it to a layer below, make an adjustment to it, so it's a little bit darker. And I can select those 2 layers and convert that into a smart object. So if I double click on this thumbnail, you'll see the first level of the smart object, and I can double click on this one, and then you'll see the 3rd level of the smart object. So yes, you can definitely nest a smart object inside of smart object inside of smart object. So just to get back to where we were, and in case there was any confusion, I'm going to delete this file and start from scratch, or this layer, just so that we see the whole process. So I saved one of these smart objects as a PSB, as Sean pointed out, into my computer. And the reason that I did that was to try to explain that, again, I don't know how Nick created this document. So he could have either started the composite here and made it all in here, which I already explained is probably not the best thing to do, and then to work on a separate smart object, put everything in there and make it larger. That way you can manipulate it accordingly. If his workflow is, oh, I did make this in a different file and all I did was just drag the layers onto here, I still would argue that that's not the best workflow. The best workflow would be to use that original file and place it as a linked smart object. And that's what I was trying to demonstrate. If you go into File and select Place Linked, you can select that file. It comes in here, and notice the little icon here, that little chain link icon. That means that this image is, or this layer is referencing an external file. So I can make, my adjustments, and oops, I didn't want to drag the guide there. I can make my adjustments and just place that, wherever it needs to go. And if I ever need to make changes to the inside of that smart object, all I need to do is double click on the thumbnail, just like you would with a regular smart object. It opens up that file, that separate file, and then you can make your adjustments in here, whatever it is. Maybe you want to change the color or whatever you want to do. It really doesn't matter. But when you make the change to the file, it also makes the change to the working document. And this is actually a technique that you can use if you're a designer who's using maybe the same company logo for a project, and then your client decides to update the logo. Well, then you just have to update one file, and then the logo will update on all the files that are referencing that logo file. I know it might sound a little confusing, but it's basically like video. If you're a video editor, when you open up a Premiere file, you're referencing files. You're not really embedding files into your Premiere file. So it's the same idea. You're referencing external files to display on your working document. So I hope that makes sense. Let me see if there's any other questions in the chat. I don't see any other questions, but I do see Andrew Kavanagh from the Photoshop and Lightroom group on Facebook. Hey, Andrew, how's it going? Good to see you. If you haven't already, make sure you check that out on Facebook. Andrew runs one of, actually, it might be the biggest Facebook group on Photoshop and Lightroom, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, Andrew, thank you so much for your support. And yeah, I don't see any other questions in the chat.
Sorry, since you stopped a second, I just wanted to follow up on what we were talking before regarding PSB and PSD, because I've seen that many people in the chat were saying that were the first time that they were hearing about PSB.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to mention and not forget another format file, which is TIFF. That is usually the standard format, which it can be used also for files that are bigger than 2 gigabytes. So that's an alternative to Photoshop, and that's usually the only reason why I know that is because that's what is used to send photography or any design that's got photography to print. But I would love to know, your knowledge about
Yeah,
TIFF and when to
yeah.
use
So
them.
TIFFs are pretty good as well. They support layers, and if I'm not mistaken, I think Adobe also developed it. I'm sure somebody in the chat will correct me if I'm wrong. But the point is that they also support larger sizes and they support layers. And if I'm not mistaken, the PSD format is based on TIFF, and the TIFF files are also what Lightroom uses when you convert. Well, not I don't use the word convert. When you open a Lightroom photo in Photoshop, it'll convert it into a TIFF because now it supports layers. So if you're working in Lightroom, and actually now that I'm talking about it, I guess I should show it. But I'm going to open up Adobe Lightroom here, and it's opening up on my second monitor. So I'm going to need to drag it over to my main one as soon as it opens. But here we go. We have some files, and some of these images are actually shot by my good friend Mark Heaps, and I'm having trouble dragging it over. Why is it not? There we go. Here we go. So this is Adobe Lightroom, and this is actually my friend Mark's daughter. She's older now. She's like
wow.
12, I think, but she was a baby here. But the point is that if you're working on a file in Lightroom, right, and you're making your adjustments, whatever they are, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to hit the auto button just so that the AI applies the settings that it thinks that would make this photo look better. But the point is that when you're working on this and you want to do something else in Photoshop that Lightroom can do, you can click on this 3-dot icon and select Edit in Photoshop. That will open up in Photoshop as a TIFF file. So it wouldn't open as a PSB or PSD or anything like that. And you can see Photoshop is opening it up. And you can see here in the tab that this is a now TIFF file. And if I make an adjustment to this, maybe, like a color adjustment, I could have done this in Lightroom, but, for the example, I'm just going to do it on here. So, we'll just make it, we'll make the car red, and then we'll paint on the layer mask with black. I'm taking way too long for this example, but anyway, it doesn't matter. Here we go. It's a giant file. This is why it's going so slow, but you get the idea. So then once you are done working in Photoshop, when I save it, oh my God, I can't believe how slow this is going. When I save it, it's going to save in the TIFF format, and it's going to bring it back into Lightroom. And when I open up Lightroom, you should see the adjustment. I don't know why it's taking so long. There we go. You should see the adjustment. Now, to be very clear, this is no longer the raw file. Now this is the TIFF file that you can continue working with in Lightroom. So as you can see, just to further expand on Kladi's point, the TIFF file is also used heavily within the Adobe apps to share the same file between each other. Also, just so you know, in Lightroom, now when I open this up, you can see that, where's my car? Oh, here it is. You see that little number 2 there? See that? That just means that we have 2 versions of it. See that? We have the blue one and the one that has this little picture. That means that this is the cover of the stack, but this is not a raw image, but this one here at the bottom is. So you essentially create a duplicate, and the reason you create a duplicate is because TIFF files can support Photoshop layers. And then you bring that TIFF file back into Lightroom and continue editing if you want, or just export it from Photoshop. But that's something that you can do. I don't have a lot of time left, and the other suggestion I had for Nick here was because what he did here is he and this is totally fine. I'm assuming this is an Adobe stock template. There's plenty of free Adobe stock templates that you can download and totally cool if you use them. But I might actually suggest to create your own, because it's really not that difficult, especially if it's something like this. I would actually venture into trying out Photoshop and just creating your own. So I know that I have a texture here, like you can probably use this one. And I'm just going to open it up. And it's also an Adobe stock image, but you can take a photo of whatever you like. And the reason that I think that you should create your own is because you have more flexibility. I'm going to try to almost duplicate what he had, but then I'm going to make some changes so that you could see, that you can make your own adjustments. So, you know, I'm trying to duplicate something similar to what he had. And the frame is actually super easy to create. You can select the rectangle tool, make sure that you have shape active. The color at this point doesn't matter. We don't need a stroke. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create my shape here. There it is. And here's a trick for you. You press Control A on Windows, Command A on the Mac. You'll select the canvas. With the Move tool active, you can click on the center icons here to align the rectangle right to the center of the image. Then I'm going to duplicate it and press Control J on Windows, Command J on the Mac, and Control T, Command T to transform. And I'm going to scale it in, and this will be my frame. Now, what I'm going to do is with any of my vector tools active, I can go into subtract front shape, and it's going to create that. It's going to make everything black, but that's okay, because when I select both layers and press Control E on Windows, Command E on the Mac, it'll just give me the outline of that frame like you see there. And then I can create another shape, but this time I'll just fill it with white. Oops, sorry, I had that shape selected, which is why I accidentally changed the color. But anyway, let me just create the frame here, the inside rather, like so. And this is going to be white. Now, the reason that I'm doing all this work is because I think you'll get a lot more out of it if you have control of the individual pieces to just create a better composite, a better mockup. And one of the things that you can do is, for example, with this top copy, you can apply a texture to it. And it could be any texture that you want. So, for example, I have this wooden texture here, and I'm going to click and drag it down and apply it to my image. Oops, I think I'm working with, yeah, grayscale. The reason that was in black and white is because my mode is grayscale, but I'm going to change it to RGB. Do not flatten it. And when I drag down, you should see the color. There it is. Looks great. I can hold Control Alt G on Windows, Command Option G on the Mac, and then that creates my frame. And then you can even go into the bevel and emboss and start applying, you know, a nice bevel, contour maybe, and adjust it just to give it a little bit of depth, you know. And then obviously you can adjust the colors and everything that you want to make it more, to stand out more. And actually, that is not working. So let's figure out why. But anyway, the point is that you can make all these different adjustments. Outer glow, let me just see how much time I have. Okay, I have about 5 minutes. So outer glow, this is one other thing I wanted to mention. With layer styles, you don't necessarily have to listen to what the label says. For example, this one says outer glow, but you can change it to normal and change it to black, and then you can make this a shadow. And I don't know if my photo, oh, here we go, there it is. I just needed to make it a little larger. But you can see now how now we have a little shadow that is going out instead of just staying in there like so. So just because the label says glow doesn't mean you have to use it as a glow. You can change the blending mode to something else and use it to suit your purposes. In this case, I just want it sort of like a shadow on both sides. So that's an option there. Maybe add a little bit of noise so that it's not like a completely clean shadow, just a little tiny bit like that, so that we see, you know, a little bit of that. And also maybe I will add, I'm just curious to see why okay, there it is. It's because I was using black, but that's okay. There is when I apply my wood on top of this, the reason that we can't see it is because of the blending modes that I'm using, or not the blending modes, the advanced blending options here. So we can make some adjustments here and we should be able to get it. I am having such like a mental block today, maybe because it's 7 a.m. in the morning here, and I'm just having issues. So I'm going to do something that you shouldn't do. I'm going to just create a layer mask out of this. Actually, no. I'm going to maybe change the blending mode to like overlay. Oh my God, guys, today is just not my day. We're just going to move on from that, and then you can say Jesus couldn't figure out the blending mode or the layer styles. And I'm also looking at the time, looking at Kladi.
Jesus, people are loving the problem solving, though. I think that's the exact beauty of being live, you know, like that's real life workflow. Sometimes you have a slow day, sometimes computer is low.
Yeah. And the thing is like there's a thing with not adjustment layers, layer styles. And let me here. I'm gonna solve this for you guys. I was gonna show you something really. Actually, I'll show you. All right, I'm gonna solve this, and I'm gonna show you the cool thing I wanted to show you.
Feel free to borrow
Let
5 minutes from me if you need to.
Okay, great. So what I'm gonna do is disable this, and I'm gonna apply a color overlay just so that I could see the bevel and emboss. And I think the bevel and emboss is like not strong enough, so I'm just gonna make it stronger and maybe deeper. There we go. So it's really, really noticeable, and then I can adjust it accordingly. So there it is. It's super, super noticeable. So now I can't miss it. Super noticeable. And there is, when you apply a texture on top of a layer style that has a color overlay, it won't show, right? So I can disable the color overlay, and there it is. I just wasn't doing it properly. I was doing it too small, and it wasn't showing. So now that I see it there properly, I can go into my bevel and emboss, and I can decide to use a different blending mode if I want to. I probably wouldn't use screen in this case. In this case, I probably would use overlay, and you can see how that changes. For multiply, I think multiply will work, but I would reduce the opacity. I usually don't like using pure black as my shadow, so I'll select the color that's found in the actual image and then use that, and then maybe increase the opacity so it's, you know, like a really dark version of that. Also, I don't like that sharp edge, so I will soften it a bit and maybe reduce the size, you know, to something that works. Overlay might be a little too strong in that case, but you get the idea. You can play with it and get the results that you want. Now, the cool thing I wanted to show you is, let me hold Control on Windows, Command on the Mac, click on the layer thumbnail, hold Shift and hold Control, and click on this layer thumbnail just to select that entire square. And what I'm going to do is show you how to create a cool shadow that in a method you probably haven't seen before. So I'm going to fill this with black. I know I just said that I don't like using black as my shadow color, but the background is gray, so I guess it works in this case. So with my layer selected here, which is just a black box, what I'm going to do is go into Filter, Blur, Blur Gallery, Path Blur. And you can decide which way the light and shadows are going, right? So in this case, we have the highlight on the right. So that means the shadows will be on the left. So you can just click this arrow here like so. And actually, we'll make it even more dynamic. We'll make it go like down instead of just to the left. And you can increase the speed here. But notice that the blur is just going in both directions. So I actually only want it to go to the direction that the arrow is pointing. So I'll uncheck the center blur box. And see that? See how that looks super, super cool? Look at this. Super cool, right? You guys like that?
That's
I don't
amazing.
know why, but
I didn't know about that.
But I like that a lot. So then you can, you know, adjust your shadow any way that you want. And, you know, the endpoint speed, totally up to you how you want to adjust this shadow. So what I'll do in this case is maybe something like this, and then press OK. And you can just do this again. Like, this looks okay, but maybe I wanted just a little bit more blur. So you can go into Filter, and then the first option will be the last filter that you applied. You can click on that and, you know, just sort of enhance that effect even a little bit further, like so. And, you know, it's a little too strong, so you can always reduce the opacity, you know, to whatever works for you, and just adjust it accordingly. And actually, you know what? Now that I did that second one, I'm not sure if I like it. So I'll just stick to the first one. And it might be a little too sharp. So maybe Filter, Blur, and just a tiny little bit of Gaussian blur just because it looks too sharp. So let me see what looks good here. Maybe a little more. You know, I think you get the idea. Just so that it doesn't look so sharp. And just reduce the opacity a little bit, like so. So this is why I like separating everything into my own layers, because I can apply textures, I can apply shadows, I can apply whatever I want. Also, if I don't like the background, I can always swap it out or maybe add a color. For example, if I wanted like a red background, I can change the blending mode to multiply and I get that color. That's a terrible color, so that probably wouldn't work well, but I think you get the idea. You can make any of these changes accordingly, and you're not stuck with whatever the template gave you. You can make your own template. So that's the point of this whole process. You can make your own template and you can customize it any way that you want. especially if it's a simple template like you had here. It's just basically a texture in the background in a box. That's all it is. But as you can see, you can start adding so many more elements that will help you enhance that template. And it doesn't require a lot of work, maybe a little bit of fine tuning, but at the very end, this will be your template. And also to apply your image is very simple because now you have this box, right? That's where the image will show. You don't even have to worry about, aligning it perfectly, because you can just drag in your piece of art in here, and you can just press Control-Alt-G on Windows, Command-Option-G on the Mac to clip it to that layer, and then just resize the template accordingly, or the image accordingly, to fit within your template. And it's so much better because, again, everything is in its own layer and is very customizable, and you can do whatever you like to it.
That's super cool. Everybody is loving it. Anika just said, well, this is literally saving my life. Thanks, Asus.
Awesome.
Lifesaver.
Yeah. Oh, that's a very good point, Sean. So Sean was saying add the pattern in the layer styles. So that's another thing that you can do. You can save this layer as a pattern, and then from the layer styles, you can go into pattern overlay and then add your pattern in here. Obviously, I don't have that pattern saved on there, but you can just put whatever pattern you want in there, and there it is. So that's another thing that you can do. Exactly. But yeah, you can do that. And in case you're wondering how to save a layer as a pattern, well, you have your layer, and then you can open up your patterns panel under Window, patterns, and then you can just add this as a pattern in here. And oh wait, oh no, I'm thinking of saving it, but actually, you got to go. Today is just not my day, guys. I'm so sorry. Like, we need to start making the rework at like 3 p.m. when I'm fully awake. No, it's 4 p.m. for Kladi, not for me. So with this layer active, if you want to save it as a pattern, what you need to do is go into Edit and define it as a pattern. Here you go, define pattern. I was doing it as if I was saving it as a Creative Cloud asset, but you can just call it wood, press OK, and there's my pattern. So now I can go into the layer styles here and go into pattern overlay, and I should see that pattern at the very bottom. There it is. And I can adjust the scale. So I'll do something like maybe 25 and increase the opacity. Do 25
Jesus Viola is asking, not a morning person, Jesus?
No, clearly not. See, like I'm working on the opacity, thinking I'm scaling it, and I need to go into the scale. Today's just not my day, guys. I don't know what it is. But that's like what it looks like at 25%. But yeah, and one thing about layer styles that I guess I should show you guys now that I'm there is when you're with a pattern, you can actually click and drag directly over the image, and you can reposition that. See that? See how I'm just dragging it? So maybe you can, get it to align. So like here, I want this line to align with the frame, and I think that's kind of okay. Maybe get it a little bit better. So there we go. So see, I was able to align it, and it looks fantastic.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jesus. That was super cool. Despite the fact that you said that it wasn't your day, everybody is loving it. So the most important thing is to share these amazing new tips and techniques. That's why we're here, to share workflows and help you to rework your files, and especially finding new way of new way of iterating your workflow. And the beauty of Adobe Live, I've been hosting some amazing artists lately. I always say, Jesus, the beauty here is that I can see people doing things in so many different ways, and there is no right and wrong. It's just learning more, learning new ways, learning new time-saving techniques, and just I think it's really, really cool to hang out here at Adobe Live and learn all these different tips and workflows. So thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah. And Viola said, grab a beer. I don't like beer, Viola. I'll have wine, but not beer. I need more coffee. Peter, I actually stopped drinking coffee like in November. So I haven't had any coffee since then. Yeah.
Fantastic. And I'm going to jump real quick into my screen. In the meantime, if you still have any question with Jesús, I'm going to just grab a minute to talk about Rework It again, just in case you have not submitted your file, or I've seen Peter and many other people that have just joined us in midstream. I'm going to jump into my screen and share with you again the page in which you can submit your work is iamkladi.com/reworkit. From here, you're going to be able to click on the Submit Your Design, and that's the place where you can add your files, your email, and of course, let us know which app you use. But most importantly, if you have a specific question on your file, and if you work with more than one files or many different files, don't worry, that's totally fine. We of course are going to be opening them in Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign. So make sure that the file that you're sharing with us has these components as well, even if it's part of a bigger project. We're always very curious to see what you're sharing. And if for whatever reason you have issues with your files here, you can just again use this form as just an email, because I will be reading all of them, and I do every week. So I will be able also to share a Dropbox links with you, which is actually a very fair point. We never really thought about that, Jesus, but maybe we can suggest to have also a Dropbox
Mm-hmm.
or
Dropbox, yeah.
Dropbox, or maybe a WeTransfer,
Google Drive or whatever.
Google Drive, whatever you want. You can just place the link in there as well. So probably I'm going to actually edit this little description, so you can also share your links in there. There is absolutely no harm in doing that. Mm-hmm. And then click on submit. And today we're going to be talking about InDesign, and I actually see the artist that will be featured here. I was just saying hello to Laura, because Laura is the artist featured today for InDesign. Let me go ahead and show her Behance portfolio. And I know that like Jesus took like a little bit, maybe 5 minutes or so today. So Laura, don't worry. I'll see, as far as we go today. If not, tomorrow we're still here together. So maybe I can start tomorrow with your work as well. But first and foremost, I want to make sure that everybody goes and follow Laura. And actually, I'm going to follow her as well. She's a designer. She's actually looking for new opportunities in Copenhagen, Denmark. But I guess that, everybody now works on remote. So make sure to check out her lovely work. I can see, Laura, that you also joined the Daily Creative Challenges, and you got your work featured in XD. So congratulations. The work that we're going to be looking at today is also inside our Behance. So make sure to go ahead and click on the different project, and the one that we're going to be talking about today. I'm glad that we have a little description, which is also what Laura has kindly shared. We're going to be reviewing her magazine. She designed this magazine as part of an academic project, and it talks a lot about her nomadic lives in terms of traveling. So we have a lot of photography, and Laura has created the layout, and of course, I believe the photos as well. And we have here the mockups, and we also have an issues, and which is pretty much a website that display magazines, so you can actually go ahead and read it directly from your Behance profile. And something else that she mentioned is that she was looking forward to see what we could do with this file, because she probably wants to create a book out of it. This is just a magazine format, so we're going to talk about how to change format as well, and so on. So that's the project. And by the way, I think you've done a fantastic job. I love the mockup. That's something that I always suggest to people, to make sure to contextualize your work. So as you can see, Laura has actually contextualized the project into a magazine, and we have this beautiful, very gorgeous mockup that not only talks about the fact that we're looking at the artwork inside the magazine, but we also have the camera, because there are a lot of photographies inside the magazine, and we have a little bit of this nature coming through with the shadows. So Laura, that's a 10 on 10 in terms of really ticking all the boxes for your presentation, for your work. And something that I like to mention whenever you place your work inside Behance is try to make sure that you publish work that you want to be hired for. So, if Laura is displaying all these gorgeous InDesign files and editorial projects, most likely, she's going to be hard to do editorial. So Laura, I really hope that you love doing editorial, because that's the entire point of displaying your favorite work, so you actually can achieve your dream and get paid to do what you love doing, which I think is a dream for everybody. And since we're here, before we jump into InDesign, and we were looking at my website, I'll never really talk about all the different courses that I've done lately, because I've been doing quite a lot. So I just focused on creating rather than sharing. Actually, Jesus, I gotta say thank you to you, because you're usually my PR. Jesus shares more of my courses than I do, so thank you so much for that. But I wanted to mention, since we're gonna be working in InDesign, for those of you that are new with InDesign, if you head to iamkladi.com and then click on courses, you're gonna be able to access the InDesign Quick Start. From here, you'll see that there is a link to LinkedIn Learning and lynda.com, in which you will be able to dive in InDesign if you're perhaps new with InDesign. So this is already created with InDesign 2021, so it would be a super quick jump start into InDesign if you have not had the chance to do so already. And Jesus, let me know, feel free to interrupt if there are any questions in the chat.
No questions in the chat at the moment.
Okay, fantastic.
Oh, Viola's saying that she's taking your course on LinkedIn Learning.
Oh, fantastic. I really hope that you like it and that you enjoy. I see that Sam has shared the Illustrator course. Yeah, there is also an Illustrator course. There is a LinkedIn Illustrator course and LinkedIn InDesign course. So you can find both of them, and there is more content in Illustrator as well. Fantastic. So that's the file that Laura has submitted, and she's done a really good job in terms of creating a package. I'm going to go ahead and see if I can see the little folder. So she has shared with me a folder, which was a zip folder here, Nomadic Travels, which is the name of the magazine. And inside of this folder, I can find the document fonts, although not all of them, but we're going to talk about that in a second. Some instruction regarding the actual folder, the links, which contains a lot of Photoshop files. And again, I'm going to dive into these details in just a second. And then an IDML file, which is a template. So basically, if I do open the IDML, I will be able to open another version of the file and make any edits that I want without changing the original file that Laura has created. And then we have an InDesign file, which is the one that I've opened in my InDesign. Right, so one of the main questions that I had for Laura, since she's in chat, was to ask how come she has embedded, actually no, she's not embedded, she has shared Photoshop files for a document. The reason is that makes your document very heavy and very large. Despite I have a very fast connection, it took me quite a long time to download it. So, and that might not be the case for a printer. So I understand that if you're working in a team, it might be a great idea to have Photoshop files, because then that means that you still leave the opportunity open for an art worker to go ahead and change and enhance your photos and open them directly in Photoshop. But otherwise, I would strongly suggest and recommend to flatten your document either as a JPEG, or as we were saying before, the industry standard is the TIFF extension, and that will allow especially printers to be able to access your document and your photos with no problems. And then another thing that I wanted to tackle regarding the images is that first thing that I do is that I had to relink them. So Laura has created a package, which is thumbs up on that. In order to create a package, we went over that in another rework, and I'm just going to mention it real quick. Simply click on File and then Package, or you have the long shortcut, which is Shift Option Command P in order to access the packaging dialog box. Now you want to make sure that for the fonts, you do have all the fonts embedded in here, and we can see that we have one missing, which is Lucida. Bright is a font that is actually missing, and we could perhaps replace. So that was something probably, Laura, that you wanted to check before you submit it. And again, link and images. We have some images that are embedded inside the actual package, but let's go back and see the actual embedding on the images. So I'm going to go ahead and click on cancel. If we head to the window menu and then links, we're going to be able to see that the majority of the links are actually not embedded. This is not a huge problem, because again, they were embedded within the package. So if we go back to the actual folder, you can see that I have a links folder that has all the files. So InDesign automatically looks inside that folder that is part of the package and links them back. But that requires an extra step. So Laura, a very first tip that I wanted to give to you when you create a file, especially when images are so many and there are such a at the heart of such a creation. All you want to do is to select your file, and we can start from the first one, then hold the shift key and go ahead and scroll to the very last one in order to select them all, because in this case none of them is actually embedded within the document. And then we can click on the top flyout menu, and from here select embed link. And look what happens. In this case, we have this little icon which resemble pretty much the icon that you can find on top of the smart objects as well in Photoshop. This little icon will let you know that your file is actually now part of your document. So even if you do not package your file and you want to share it, or if you package your file, whenever anybody is going to open it inside InDesign, the images are going to be already part of your InDesign files. So make sure that's something that I have like I've probably seen also professional as well. That's where, you know, I will suggest and I will recommend. That's what I did it as soon as I started using InDesign. I literally had a paper checklist or a post-it that you can have on your laptop, on your desk, on your desktop computer, on your screen, whatever you want. But I have a checklist in terms of, you know, making sure that I'm working on the right color mode. And one of these checklists was definitely having bleed if you're working with a print document, and most definitely embed your file, because sometimes, you know, you might miss a deadline just because of that. Something that I haven't tried that I really wanted to do here with the images is to go ahead into my library, and I'm going to create a new library by clicking on create new. And by the way, anytime that I talk about any of these panels, if you do not find them into your workspace, remember all the panels inside the Creative Cloud apps live under the window menu at the top. So choose window and then select any panel that you would like to see. In this case, CC Libraries is the one that I'm working with. And from here, I'm going to call this one Laura, because I know that is Laura Projects. And from here, let's see what happens if I click and drag an image inside my document. So as you can see, the image is already been uploaded inside my library. And then what I will do is to right click on it and then select on edit to see what happens with the image. So at the moment it still is at because it's imported by InDesign, it opens within an InDesign file, and we can see that because the little file format is IDMS inside the file, so it's basically an InDesign file. So the best way to do so in order to have your file available and keep them editable is to have them inside your library, and of course from your flattened image. So Laura, what I would have done here is to get any of these Photoshop files and then perhaps create a dedicated Creative Cloud library in which you can then simply drag your image in. And let me show you what happens when you do have actually any image open here. Let me see if I can find a JPEG here. So when you right click on it and select edit, right from InDesign, Photoshop will launch. So that's how you can access Photoshop directly from InDesign, and then you can go ahead and edit your image. Of course, in this case, it's not going to be a Laura image. So that's another way in which you can allow your art worker or maybe your future self to keep editing images by creating a library that will include a JPEG flattened version of your images. That will reduce the size of your file and will allow you to access and edit them Photoshop in just a click. Right, another thing that I wanted to mention, Laura is saying it's an old project. I'm also not sure where it plays Photoshop photos files. Yeah, fantastic. It happens. We are here to rework it. I'm sure that Laura, if you've done it, many other people have done it. We're here to share these tips that everyone goes through this workflow trial and error. So I'm glad that that's hopefully helpful for next project, and make sure to create a dedicated library. I know that we got just a few minutes, but something that it was very related to Laura's question in terms of how to rework her project. And by the way, you can see she's done already a fantastic job. So I'm not going to go in the details of the actual artwork too much, but she asked how to translate into a different format. So the first thing that I will do is to access the document setup with the shortcut Option Command P on Mac. That's Alt Control P on Windows. And from here, you can actually adjust the layout. So we know that from the document setup, you can change all the different formatting of your document. But this is one of the, I believe it's just a couple years old, and please correct me if I'm wrong, a feature of InDesign in which you, by creating adjust layout. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm not going to touch anything, just simply create adjust layout. All I have to do is to change the size of my document. And what I recommend for book size is something that usually fits into a purse, or like, you know, it's easy to carry if you're in a Metrolink or if you're on a train and easy to carry with you, is the size of an A5, which is half of a letter size, which is 148 millimeters by 210 millimeters. And make sure that you select adjust font size and adjust locked content in order to scale everything proportionally. And look what happens if I click on OK. So just by clicking OK, InDesign will resize the entire document, included the fonts, and basically you already have a starting point which is reflecting your artwork already in just a few clicks. And I'm gonna do Command Z to undo real quick what we did, just to show you what happened if I do not select the font. So if I do not select adjust font size, I'm gonna go ahead and click on OK. You will see that when the file is actually resized, the majority of the font, let me see, it looks like I haven't done it. Here we go. Oh yeah, I haven't changed the size. That's why I was like, it looks like nothing happened. I didn't change the size, so I'm gonna go ahead again and change it to 148 by 210 and click on OK. So we will have the scale, but can you see that a lot of fonts are pretty much missing, and you have this little plus icon that let us know that the font is basically too big for the actual frame. And you can also go ahead and click on the little text box and use the shortcut option Command C, that's Alt Control C on Windows, in order to adapt and adjust the frame to the content, in this case to the text. But we strongly recommend to first resize everything and then go ahead and have a quick check. Now, one last thing that I want to mention, and I've got 1 minute left, hopefully we can do it, is that one of the fonts in particular was this Lucida Bright. And by the way, how do I know what's the name of the font that is missing? First of all, I know that the font is missing because it's highlighted in pink. This is only going to be visible if you are in normal mode. Make sure to toggle with the W key between a preview, which will not show you any hidden details, and a normal mode. And when you're in normal mode, you can see that the text that is missing is highlighted in pink. All you have to do is to click on it and then go to your properties panel, and from here you're going to be able to see the actual name on the front of the font, which is Lucida Bright. Then what I've done is looked for the font online, and online there is actually the font is available online for free, so I could potentially just download it and upload it. But what I will do in this case, what if you want to use fonts like, you know, maybe it's like a limitation of your brief, you can only use Adobe font or font in the type kit. How do you work around that? How do we find a font that is similar to Laura? Well, the first thing that I will do is to take a screenshot of my fonts, just like so, and this is going to be now inside my computer. And you can take a photo with your phone. You can do, as long as you have an image of the font that is used. It can actually literally be from a record, from a printed element. And you can use fonts.adobe.com by clicking on the little camera here at the top. You will be able to upload the image of the font, and you're gonna let Adobe Font do the magic for you. So basically what is gonna happen here is that Adobe Font is gonna look for fonts that look exactly like the font that will be used. And again, it looks like it's taking a second to think about it. Let's see if we can actually drag it in here. And I know we got 1 minute. If it doesn't work, we can pick it up from here today. Oh, it's scanning, finally. So all you have to do, again, when you select a photo, you will see that there is this little scanner going through scanning the image. You can modify the selection to make sure that you have the entire word. And then it's going to ask you to make sure to type the exact text, just so font is actually knowing the word that you're looking for. And right away, it's going to find the font that is pretty much similar to the one that you have worked with. So in this case, I can see that we have this Magneta medium that is very similar to the Lucida. All you have to do is to click on Activate Font, and this will be activated right away and ready to use inside your Creative Cloud documents. So maybe we can pick up here tomorrow and see how to adapt the paragraph styles and adapt this font. So Laura, thank you so much for sending it. We're going to finish off tomorrow with this file. So I hope you enjoyed the feedback so far. And Jesus, thank you so much as well. I know we got pretty much less than a minute. So if you want to encourage everybody to submit their file for rework.
Yeah, everybody submit your files for rework it now. Do it between the end of our show and then before Paul training starts. Paul is up next with a Photoshop Daily Creative Challenge. So make sure that you submit your work and stick around for Paul.
Yes, and we will see tomorrow. So make sure to submit your file. We look forward to rework it tomorrow together here at Adobe Live. Go and grab a cup of coffee, and I'll see you later. Bye, everybody. Thank you, Sus.
Bye. Thank you, Kladi.